Thank you very much. Our next speaker, who comes to us from France, is Sébastien Périmony, and he's a Schiller Institute representative. His topic is When Africa Looks to the Stars.
I hope you can hear me. Thank you, Denis.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so I start. The last word I heard from Lyndon LaRouche were do it. We are not here, as too many people might think or might be, to comment or watch the world, as we do with a Netflix series. We are here to change it, because that's the true nature of a human being. And what I would like to present to you today is people who are doing it, people who are preparing the next era of mankind, people who have what we can call a galactic sense of human progress. The first reaction we have in our modern, decadent Western society when we are talking about space exploration is why spend some money on space exploration when we have so many problems on Earth? So imagine the kind of answer we have when we are associating space policy and Africa. People are freaking out in our western side of the world. A friend of mine, who is a space engineer at the National Space Center and Research and Development Agency in Nigeria, has a lot of fun with that. When he was studying in France, in Europe, in Italy, for example, he told me that people were totally surprised to discover that there was a space agency in Africa, even if the space agency of Nigeria has been created 20 years ago. Today, space policy is one of the most important science-driven factors, along with the nuclear of development energy, in the near future to really industrialize the African continent and bring it out of the neo-colonial, neo-Malthusian policies that killed millions of Africans under the IMF and the World Bank dictatorship, as well as what we call here in France, la France-Afrique. Now it's the time to see Africa with the eyes of the future and with stars in our eyes. Thus, early in 2017, the Ministry of Education and Science of the 55 nations of the African Union adopted for the first time a space policy for all the African continent. And I quote, promoting science, technology, and innovation, a move which has been seen as, quote, decisive for the economic development of the continent. In January 2019, last year, the African Union ratified the creation of a real space agency, choosing Egypt to host its official headquarters. According to Sekou Ouedraogo, aeronautical project manager at Safran Aircraft Engines and author of the book African Space Agency, Vector of Development, which was published in 2015, for €1 spent in space industry, €100 will be redistributed in the economy of the country. In other words, the development of Africa goes through space. As we will see, the space policy of African states is the exact opposite of what we can see in the Hollywood movies or in the thought of those who want to use space as an area of geopolitical domination. Today, only 9 countries in Africa have their own Earth observation satellites, which is Algeria, Morocco, Angola, Ghana, Egypt, Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, and Rwanda. During the past 2 decades, 41 satellites were launched by African countries. The first one was in 1998 and 20 others during the last 5 years. These figures clearly shows that the African dynamism in the sector with an increase of 100% in only 5 years. But what we hear every day, think local, think small. Small is beautiful. To what I want to answer today, what we can only respond to that is that nothing is more local than space. And as of today, while African countries are currently experiencing very serious threats of famine due to locust invasion, for example, we are entering at the heart of the matter for the application of the space technology in the continent. Are you against disease in Africa? Use space technology. The most important case in this area has been the ability to predict malaria epidemics. We know that there is a correlation between the mosquito larvae that spread malaria and levels of humidity. Thanks to the satellite, high humidity somewhere reveals where the mosquitoes are going to propagate. The public authority can therefore anticipate. NASA Earth observation satellites can track the forces that create malaria outbreaks, and their data can help local community to face it by anticipation. There is a project, the NASA project Land Data Assimilation System, which allows satellites to track environmental factors such as rainfall and human factors such as lodging, which may attract mosquitoes, the host of malaria in the region, far above the Amazon rainforest in South America, for example. Are you against terrorism? Once again, use space technology. The Nigerian Space Agency, as what I said in 2001, and has already produced its own satellite. In 2003, it launched the Nigeria Sat-1, which monitor oil activity in the Niger Delta. In 2011, Nigeria Sat-2 and Nigeria Sat-X were launched from the Yasny base in Russia. Their job? To monitor natural disaster, provide valuable security data. But most important is the use of satellite in the war against terrorism. Surveillance from the sky should allow the localization of armed groups such as Boko Haram, for example, and their hostages. At the Schiller Institute, we have repeated again and again that without the immediate launching of the Transaqua project to save the Lake Chad, misery and terrorism will stay forever in this region. Figure released in May 2019 by the United Nations Agency for Refugee Report showed that the Lake Chad Basin region is grappling with a complex humanitarian emergency. Over 3.3 million people have been displaced, including 2.5 million internally displaced people, IDP, in northeastern Nigeria, and over 500,000 in Cameroon, Chad, Niger, and the other countries of the region. So this has also a big impact for here in Europe, with thousands of people trying to come here, but unfortunately, many of them dying in the Mediterranean Sea. So if you want to stop terrorism, you have to use also space technology. More funny, if you like animals, you have also to use space technology. One example is Kenya, with one of the countries who have built its first satellite by its own on its own territory at the University of Nairobi. It was then launched in Japan in May 2018. It's a small satellite, a nano satellite, it's just 2 square centimeters. Its aim is to collect information, of course, for weather forecasting, food security mapping, border surveillance or disaster management, but also for wildlife surveillance. According to different institutions, an elephant is killed every 26 minutes for its ivory in Africa. That means approximately 20,000 a year. So in Kenya launched a program, the Teboma program, which takes its name from a Kenyan philosophy, saying that a community becomes safer when 10 houses come together to look out at each other. This program used data sent by satellite to fight against elephant poaching. So for those who love animals, space policy is also natural. Most important, It's for education, especially in the remote area where space technology are very useful too. If you look at the country Rwanda, which launched its new satellite, which is called Réseau, which means vision in their language. It was launched in February last year from Kourou in France, Guyana, in partnership with a British company, OneWeb. The Rwandan Minister of Information, Communication and Technology, Paula Ingabire, said at this time, I quote, "The launch of this satellite is a symbol of Rwanda's determination to develop the space industry, build local capacity, and, most important, inspire the new generation." As you know, the African population will double by 2050, going from 1 billion individuals to more than 2 billion. And the good news is that those under 25 years old will represent 65% of the population. What project for those children, what project they will choose? Is the project of Greta Thunberg and his apocalyptic vision? Or that of a future of exploration and discovery? The most interesting part of the project Réseau of Rwanda government is that the satellite will provide internet connection to students on the island of Nkombo in Rwanda on the Lake Kivu. Like all rural schools in the country, this one suffered from no connection at all until now. So you have so many examples on how Africans are using space technology to solve local problems. I repeat, there is nothing more local than a space policy program. As we know, thinking about the future and making it is always the responsibility of a small group of determined people and determined individuals. A group of people who like to do things, regardless of group thinking or the spirit of the time. Friedrich Schiller was saying, live with your age, but not be its creation. Labor for your contemporaries, but do for them what they need, not what they prize. So please let me take a last example and tell you the story of what we call the Crazy People Club. On December 2019, the first Ethiopian satellite was launched using a Chinese rocket. It will be used to monitoring water, agriculture, climate, environment, and mining sector. It will also serve, which is the most important, as training support for the country engineers. Nicknamed the Crazy People Club, when it was created, the Ethiopian Science and Space Society was founded in 2004 by a small group of enthusiastic astronomers and astrophysicists. Its objective, beyond the more immediate one, to develop application in the civilian sector and, quote, contribute to the development of astronomy, space science, and the science associated with it in the 10 years. It was in 2004. The Ethiopian Space and Science Society, this Crazy People Club, had recruited now 10,000 members since its creation in 2004. And it recently opened in East Africa the only space observatory on the 3,200-meter summit of Enteto, overlooking Addis Ababa. The multi-million-dollar Enteto Observatory and Research Center has become one of the prime places to view the belt of Orion, Orion's belt, which appears larger and more pronounced here than from other parts of the northern hemisphere. Today, the ISSS is carrying out a feasibility studies for an even larger and higher second observatory at the historical seat of Lalibela. This project has the support of the International Astronomical Union, bringing together professionals and astronomers from more than 70 countries. NES, or National Center for Studies of Space, which is the government agency responsible for shaping and implementing France's space policy in the world, is officially engaged in this space collaboration with Ethiopia, and Macron himself, our president, went to Lalibela in March 2019 to sign a deal. Classified among the most sacred sites in the country because you have the famous rock cult monolithic churches, The wall of Lalibela is a very ancient temple of the medieval and post-medieval civilization of Ethiopia. The magnificent irony is that those temples were at this time an engineering feat, and everybody knows that they were built by angels. Thus, this Ethiopian site will host the most beautiful work of the past and of the future, combining interior contemplation with contemplation of the universe. A symbol of universal history, in fact, another proof that human creativity is the principles that allow society to project themselves in time and space for the well-being of the future generation. There are so many examples, so many projects in Africa. Last year, for example, I was in Angola and I was lucky to attend the launching of the very first satellite produced by the country. You cannot imagine the excitement of all the students who have been working on this project. It was the Apollo moment. You have also what President Marie Korsaga yesterday evening, dozens of young people in South Africa working on the distribution of dark and visible matter in spiral and irregular galaxies. You have also the Square Kilometre Array, the SCA project in South Africa. It's an international project built to build the world's largest radio telescope of the world with over a square kilometre of collecting area. Whilst 14 member countries are the cornerstone of the SCA project, around 100 organizations are working with them. World-leading scientists, engineers are working on a system which will require supercomputer 25% time more powerful than the best computer we have today in the world. It can totally change the vision of our universe by challenging the existing scientific axiom, definition, and postulates in the field like evolution of the galaxy, dark matter, cosmic magnetism, and so on and so forth. So it is fascinating, to discover that we have still so many things to discover, and that we have in Africa so many young scientists already working on it, doing things. But I have to stop there. Allow me to conclude by reaffirming the objective of this conference. Mankind's existence depends now on the establishment of a new paradigm. In the few examples I have presented here today, you have seen that one African country is working with Japan, another one is working with Russia, another with China, with France, with others. This is the way to look at the future of the world. And it has already started with the Belt and Road Initiative and the space cooperation in Africa. As the president of the Schiller Institute, Helga Zettler, said, quote, "This new paradigm must initiate the urgent reorganization of the bankrupt financial system through a new Bretton Woods and to establish a new level of international cooperation on strategic questions, science endeavor, physical economy, and a cultural renaissance." So join us, because I think now it's time to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sébastien. Thank you, Dennis.